Just remember, this is a collaborative effort. We don't have time for creative differences or outbreaks of artistic integrity.
Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks with co-hosts, myself, Ramia Amudan, and Jacob Szymanski. Hello, as well as technical producer Nisreen Abdel-Majid. Quote of the week was picked by Jacob. You know, it's been a while since I've picked, so next one I'm picking. But anyway, quote of the week, what's it about?
This one was from Greg Cox from The Bestseller Job. This is an author who, this is kind of meta. So we're talking about co-authoring today. This guy, he did a lot of novelizations of movies and TV shows and would often reach out to like these writing staffs on like how to write his books. So that's a type of co-authoring. But also in this specific book, The Bestseller Job, this book is about co-authoring. So,
Oh, how'd you
and
find
the quote
that?
is about co-authoring.
Did you go specifically look for a quote about co-authoring? Is that how you got here? Tell us.
No, my methods are confidential.
Top secret. Okay, I'm gonna assume that my guess was absolutely correct. But as you said, we are gonna be talking about co-authoring because, you know, we often think about authoring itself as a very independent, isolating endeavor, but it doesn't have to be. There is a very strange world out there of co-authoring, and we'll get to why it's strange when we talk to our peoples, Karen McKay and Theresa Power of the Center for Equitable Library Access. Also, we got Know Your Narrator in the second half of the show with Sarah Hillis. She's featuring Emily Wu Zeller, very interesting person with some interesting outlooks on narration. And somewhere in there, we're going to find time for the book club question of the week / month. What books give you wintery vibes? I know, so complex. But yeah, let's get, before we get to CELA talk, let's get to the CELA homepage. These are the 3 titles that are currently up there. The Armor of Light, Kingsbridge #4 by Ken Follett, and this is a historical fiction. We also got Starling House by Alex Ihara, which is a romantic suspense, and The Running Grave by Robert Galgrave, which is a gentle mysteries. Okay, CELA Talk. Once a month, we check in with Karen McKay and Theresa Power from the Center for Equitable Library Access to chat anything and everything in the literary world. Theresa is the content and access librarian, and Karen is the communications manager at CELA. Both of you, welcome back.
Welcome.
This is our final one.
Hello.
Of the year.
Oh, so sad.
Oh my goodness. You know, Theresa, we were having this email back and forth about intentions of 2023 and the reading intentions that we had apparently put out there at the start of the year. I cannot for the life of me remember what my intentions were. Do you remember what your intentions were?
I think I had 2 specific books on my list, and I actually do have the email thread. I did find it.
Good for
And
you.
I think my intention at the beginning of the year was to really try and carve out more time for myself for reading books that I really enjoy. Because I'm part of so many reading programs, and they're predominantly for YA and kids books, and it takes up so much of my time. So I find that I have little time in the end to read stuff that I really enjoy.
And did you follow through?
Yeah.
That's what we're actually waiting for, Theresa.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I was rambling to fill up the time there.
Right.
I have to say that no, I think that it ended up being a complete failure. I have books every year. Our family's been giving at least a book for the holidays as a present, and I have to say that I have a couple years worth of books still here that I have to read from last Christmas. I guess my intention for next year is the same, is to try and carve out more time.
Okay.
And I'll have to figure out how to do that.
Keep doing it until you get to it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It is better than the gym memberships that go astray after 2 weeks or whatever they say the stats are for most of us. Karen, did you have reading intentions of this year for the year, and did you follow through? Now we're just putting everybody on
I
the
think
spot.
my reading.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you are. I think people are going to go back and listen to the old ones and realize that I don't remember what I actually had for my intention. But I feel like I was going to take the pressure off myself to not try and read any sort of specific list or genre or whatever. I read a little bit more this summer. We were very privileged to be able to buy a cottage this summer, so there were a couple of afternoons on the dock that were just lovely with a book. Yeah, which was amazing. And it felt a little bit like I could give myself permission to sit and read versus being at home and, having kids and dogs and volunteer commitments and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I did read probably a little bit more this year than last year, but a lot of it was fluffy, which was
Still,
fine because it was on the dock. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a numbers
Um,
game. More books,
it is
check
a
mark.
numbers game. Yeah. And I also read some stuff, about cottage things like, um, more technical kinds of things. And also I picked up a really lovely book about, it's a cottage journal, which I would read a sort of a chapter of each time we were up there. It sort of follows this one family through a series of 30 years of cottage ownership. And
Whoa.
so that was really lovely to kind of connect to where I was with what I was reading. Yeah, so my intentions for the coming year probably similar. Just find books that move me, that I want to read, and give myself the permission to sit and not be productive in the way that we think about being productive in society today, and just sink into a book.
I
You know,
love
that
it.
reminds me of something that happened when I went on like a vacation with my family, like about like 10 years ago. Basically, with another family, we rented this massive house on the beach in Maryland. And in that house, there was like a little journal, like a notebook, where the people who rented the place invited people to just write down, like, oh, what did you do on your week here? And basically, there were entries like dating back to like 15 years. So you got
Whoa,
like this
cool.
picture of like everybody that went in there and almost like told a story. Like you could tell like what people were up to, where people were at in their lives. It was such an interesting little
That's
story, but
lovely.
it
Yeah.
was real. I thought it was awesome. So it
Mm,
reminds me of your journaling.
I think we all
yeah.
read
Thank you.
a book maybe we weren't expecting to read, which was the Britney Spears memoir.
Yeah, that's true. That was easy to pick up though, because
Yeah, it
I
was.
think we all wanted to know what
True.
happened there. That was
Yeah.
such
Yeah.
an interesting story just in the news that when I found
Just the
out,
headlines.
when you suggested to read this book, I was like, oh, she has a biography?
Absolutely.
I'm reading that. I
Yeah.
am
Mm-hmm.
reading that. Like, no
Mm-hmm.
question.
Is it Barbara Streisand that I feel that way about the next one? I can't remember, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh yeah. And then also a lot of people picked up Matthew Perry's book this year, right, because of his death and to how quickly it was, like less than a year to having released the book, him passing away. But guys, talk about a side note. Now we're gonna get into the strange world of co-authoring, and I don't know who brought this up. It might have been Theresa, it might have been me, but only for me because I find it to be interesting the kind of ways that co-authoring is delivered, how people end up doing this kind of thing, and also to be very honest with you, sometimes I'm like, this book was co-authored. I only knew the famous person as one of the authors. I didn't even know there was a second person involved.
What I
So
find most interesting is like how do you actually like logistically manage writing a book together? Like I'm
that's
just
fair too.
picturing two people on a sofa just like passing the keyboard back and
No
forth,
way.
like it's like two kids
No
passing
way.
a video game controller back and forth.
Not when one of them's an actual author and the other one's just an influencer, right? Because
So
that's the
is
way
it
I'm
just
seeing
like
most of
some
this.
person laying back on a couch, just like, what if we do this? And then the other person
You know
writes
what I
down the
see it as?
ideas.
I see it as a business offer. I'm the famous person. I go up to like someone who actually knows the subject and I say, hey, I want to write this book, but I have no idea how to do it. You're an actual writer slash know a bunch about this. So can we get together? Anyways,
Hmm.
these are all the speculations. Theresa, do you have more to say? Because I feel like you have the most
Yeah.
idea of what co-authoring is.
So, I mean, I think co-authoring can go one of many different ways, and I've seen it in a number of different ways, I suppose. I think the one that's becoming more and more popular and, doing collection development for CELA, I'm seeing increasingly more is this like an actual. I say actual quotation marks author, like an author that we're familiar with, partnering up with someone who is not within the realm of books or publishing or anything, but who is famous. So I'm thinking like Louise Penny and Hillary Clinton and James Patterson and Bill Clinton, or more recently, there was a collab for a book called Reykjavik by Ragnar Jonasson, who is a really well established noir writer, and he partnered with the Prime Minister of Iceland to write a book. So I think those are seemingly becoming more and more popular. And I think you're onto something there, Ramya, when you say that there's definitely like a business angle, business venture there going on where, one person can tap into perhaps an audience that they've never been able to tap into before. And you
Mm.
get new readers or you get new followers, depending on who it is, because of this collaboration.
It kind of it makes me think that sometimes when these partnerships happen, it's to lend credibility to the person that's more famous. Like I'm thinking of in a situation like Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton wrote their memoirs. They had a couple prominent co-authors tag on because like we don't know these people as authors, so
Hmm.
sometimes you scoff and think like, Ugh, is it really going to be well written though? But if you
Right.
see
Hmm.
like, who was it that co-authored those books, by the way?
The Louise Penny one, Hillary Clinton, and
Yes.
James Patterson and Bill Clinton. But I think it's
Mm.
really interesting, the Hillary Clinton one, at least. Well, I mean, it's all very interesting, but I've seen Hillary Clinton speak in person, and there is something very interesting, I'd say, in her attempt to like connect with people on a human level. And when I saw her, you can agree with her ideas and like what she's behind and all that, but when you see her, there's a lack, or I felt that there was really like a lack of connection being made there. And I wonder
Really?
if in part
Huh.
partnering with someone like Louise Penny, she's Canadian, but she has really gone beyond the borders of just Canada. She's like internationally recognized, and is feted for her books. That it takes Hillary Clinton out of that like political kind of bubble and puts her someplace else to where she can
Mm.
like connect with people on a different level.
Books do that often anyway, right? Like when we get into a memoir, period, that's what's happening. Like you're getting to know this person as more of a human being or like them stepping away from the spotlight to let us in. So this would be an interesting way to do that. Um State of Terror is the title of the book by Louise Penny and Hillary Clinton, and the president is missing is James Patterson and Bill Clinton. So there's one that I read, which is Modern Romance by Aziz Ansari and Eric Klinberg, who's the psychologist, kind of like giving us the goods on what's going on. And it's really about, dating in the modern world, what people are up to in our own neighborhoods, but also around the world and different cultural shifts and things like that. I thought this was interesting because Aziz Ansari is a comedian who basically at the start of the book was like, I was just curious and I couldn't maintain any relationship. So I wanted to get to the bottom of the dating world. And then, enter the actual author, is what I say, allegedly, Eric Klinberg, who gives us all the facts behind the curiosity. So, you know how you said, Theresa, there is a new audience, there's more people that you try to bring in as an influencer, so hence this kind of like business endeavor.
Hmm.
But I also think it's can feel so much more basic than that, where somebody can literally say, I'm curious about this subject, how do I get it out there, and put my name on it this way.
Hmm. So it lends some credibility to
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
to the book. Yeah.
Like, would you take this more seriously than a blog post or an Instagram post from Aziz if he had
Oh,
just said, "I'm curious about
absolutely.
the dating world"?
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
mean, I think that I would be expecting two different kinds of books. Like one maybe more on the humorous side, I suppose,
Yeah, the lighter side.
and
Mm.
then if you bring in someone who is quite knowledgeable and educated in that subject, it makes it a different
Psychology of
kind of book,
relationships.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the co-authors also allow for sort of an approachability that might not be there. Like, would you pick up a book written by you know, a psychology professor or an anthropologist or something on modern love, or would you pick up one that sort of has that runway, that entry point from a comedian that you follow, and then then you can get into the sort of deeper topics, but it's framed in a way that makes it maybe more accessible for folks. Um, so I think that that's an interesting aspect of the whole thing as well. Just that what are these partners, and what are they contributing each from a from a cultural
I
perspective to
think
the
that's an
book.
interesting point too, because there may be some people who are rather like self-help book adverse. They're like, I don't need a
True.
self-help book. I would never read a self-help book. Um, but that's kind of what this would be, right? But it's a different entry point for that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fair too. Exactly what Karen said, right? Like, we're more likely to pick up something if we, because like, the psychologist and the anthropologist may not have the personality even to write the book on their own and make it like viable for a pop audience. Right, like they may not be even writing in the way, or the editors would have to do the job to kind of make it more approachable, more accessible, where we can kind of lean into it, and that's not always the case. So then
Right,
enter Aziz.
because just just because you're brilliant in a certain topic, it doesn't mean you're a good writer or you're good at expressing those
Yeah.
your ideas, right? You need someone who's better at expressing themselves, even though they themselves don't have the expertise. That's where like I could see the potential of a partnership of a co-authoring situation like this.
Right. It's just kind of sucky in the sense that the people behind the info, like in this case Eric Klinenberg, doesn't get mentioned, doesn't always get mentioned. Like, you think of this book and you think of the face of the book being Aziz, and not necessarily the other person who was co-authored, and that's when it starts to get a
Yeah.
little challenging for me.
It's interesting if we go back to the Clinton books. Both of them, in both situations, both authors have a very large
Right.
presence. Um, both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were authors before they did this co-authoring project, but they were sort of more memoirs or political books, or like Hillary Clinton wrote that book about It Takes a Village. I don't know, that's probably 30 years ago now,
Mm,
maybe. Um, so they were authors, so they brought some credibility in terms of writing, but neither one of them had done, as far as I know, any fiction work. And so to partner with those two very popular fiction writers, and to write sort of crossover books, political books,
right.
in a fiction format, I wonder if that, part of that is just, a bucket list thing for them, that they want to move into a different kind of writing, or to be known for a different kind of writing, and that they bring a very different set of expertise to the authoring of a book about a president, or secretary of
Mm,
state. So yeah, I just thought that that was an interesting thing. How much of it is sort of a memoir-ish for them, or based in any kind of factual real life situations, and how much of it was just stuff that they imagined. Maybe they were the stuff of nightmares when they were actually serving as politicians.
yeah.
What this reminds me of a little bit is this idea in hip hop, of all things, where there's this huge emphasis on writing your lyrics yourself, and there's a huge disdain for what they call ghost writing. I feel like that does exist to an extent in the world of authoring books, right? Where some people do have ghostwriters, and there is a bit of stigma behind that, but there is prestige to writing a book yourself. So that's why, like, we were talking about a book that it's it's based on the knowledge of an expert in a certain topic, but it's kind of lended credibility by some other person who has more charisma or clout. There's something about if the book was written by one person, that it's a brilliant person that also has that charisma and
Mm,
writing chops. I feel like that book would be more almost what's the word? More valid, more credible in a sense. Like it's more an expression of one person's identity. It's
right.
a more true personal representation.
That's a really interesting point because and it goes back to what we said earlier about like just because you know how to write or what to write about or how to explain it doesn't mean that people are going to buy in, right? And maybe yeah, we're putting a lot of that pressure of buying in or we're just used to um with the branding of or like how much we trust you is more on how well you can like leap into our interests and pique our curiosities that way. But it doesn't necessarily mean that uh, this person is doesn't have something interesting to offer.
Can I throw a bit of a wrench, or maybe this is a wrench in that? So I was thinking about a husband and wife couple. They go by the writing name Lars Kepler, and they're a Swedish couple. And there was a lot of like brouhaha, a lot of conversation about who was Lars, who was Lars Kepler. Nobody knew in the beginning of the publication, like who is this Lars Kepler, and it was actually there was like quite a lot of speculation. It was quite a thing about trying to figure out in the media was trying to figure out who this Lars Kepler was. And they first thought it was Henning Mankell, who was also like a really well-known writer. But Mankell said, "No, this isn't us." Um, and eventually, it came out that it was this Swedish couple, and they said that the pseudonym was a method for writing together
Mm,
without limitations. While the secrecy around it stemmed from a desire to let Lars Kepler, the pseudonym, stand on his own two legs and have his books assessed without prejudice.
Hmm.
And I believe if one, if not both of them, like of the couples, were already established writers themselves. So it let these books kind of stand alone from whatever they've done before, and it let them to be free to
yeah.
write whatever they wanted to write, which I believe was quite different from what they were originally
Right, so it was a
writing.
conscious decision to use a pen name to kind of hide the fact that it was a duo. It was a similar situation to the authors of The Expanse. It was two guys that actually wrote it, but uh they use the pseudonym James S. A. Corey. Um, so it seems like they do this on purpose, just to take away that,
Mm,
I'd argue, stigma of co-authoring. I genuinely think that's a real thing. Um, I find the whole business aspect of co-authoring really interesting. A really interesting case study here is Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, which
mm-hmm.
were two massive fantasy authors at the time in 1990 when this book came out. Except what they decided to do in publication was, because Neil Gaiman was much more popular in the United States and Terry Pratchett in the UK. In the UK, the book was had the author Terry Pratchett, and then in the United States they published with Neil Gaiman as the author.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah, a lot of people didn't know that it was
Oh,
co-authored,
That
okay.
would be
and
confusing as hell.
yeah,
Trying to
it does
research the
say like
book.
in the notes in the book that
Yeah.
it is co-authored, but like the big name on the front will say Neil Gaiman in the United States and Terry Pratchett in the
Oh
UK.
gosh.
So it was a very
Yeah.
business
Yeah,
strategic. Okay.
It's interesting to see how far that kind of thing can go too, right? Like when it starts feeling like a merge if they did it on purpose to kind of separate it out in the beginning.
Yeah, I um I was thinking back to James Patterson, and he is just absolutely everywhere. From a purchasing standpoint, I don't know that a month goes by where there isn't some sort of James Patterson book to purchase. And he has a number of different series and kids series and adult series happening at the same time. And I saw this quote just to
Mm,
speak to like the business aspect of co-authoring. So the quote is to maintain the pace of production, Patterson now uses co-authors on nearly all of his
Wow.
books. He functions in part as an executive producer and in part as a head writer. It's his vision that is set out for each book or series. Then he ensures that his writers stick to what he set out. This just blew my
Huh.
mind. Like I see month to month that I can't imagine how a writer can put out a
right.
book every month or books every month. And this is just clearly how he does it. It's
It's
blows
not
my
even like
mind.
we're talking books anymore. Like, I feel like we're getting into the realms of rights and TV and how things are done in big
Yeah.
production circumstances. Hollywood. It feels like
Yeah.
Hollywood. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? It could be a factory scenario. It's just, I think we hold precious this, a book is a person, an identity, as you were saying, Jacob, earlier. And so when we think of this stuff, I almost see it as like, what? Can this be possible? Like, how do you even do this?
Well, I wonder if readers feel
That's
betrayed if
that's
they
how I
know that,
feel.
right? That they've
Great
attached
point.
themselves,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
attach themselves to an identity, and then it's not there. It's interesting because there's a similar thing happening with the Jack Reacher series, which was originally written by Lee Child, which is a pen name, and he's now taking over doing production parts to bring that series to, I think it's Netflix, but I'm not 100% sure. And his brother's taking over writing the actual
Oh,
book, so they're transitioning the character from one author to another. And I wonder, in the same sort of way, will people feel betrayed? Will you be looking for differences? And
absolutely.
there's already some differences, right? Like the Jack Reacher character, if people are familiar, is sort of like a technophobe, and in the ones that, I think his name's Andrew Reacher, or Andrew Grant rather, sorry, is writing he's using the pen name Andrew Childs to keep it consistent. But he's, given this character a cell phone, and he started to move him into the maybe the 20th century. Yeah, anyway, it'd be interesting to see how readers react to that, because I think that there's an attachment, right, to the author and to the experience of reading a person's thoughts versus a
You're
conglomeration's
right.
thoughts.
I think this has happened. I want to say this has happened for the Bourne series as well, where the more recent books in that series have been authored by somebody else, as well as The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I
Mm.
believe there's a new
Oh,
Yeah,
book
that's right.
that just came out, but by
Hmm.
a different author, but continuing that
huh.
Same thing with the
series.
Dune series. A couple of the last books in the series were written by the original author, Frank Herbert's son. So a bit of nepotism there.
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
I mean, we already get so flustered or picky when, authors die or authors put away things, and then we're like, well, somebody else carry on, like Scarlet after Gone with the Wind, right? And though,
Hmm.
even in those circumstances, though you can say it's understandable,
Oh
still,
yeah. Oh
we're
yeah.
not
It's
necessarily
understandable.
satisfied, though, and we
You
we get
wish
caught
it
up.
came from the mind of the original author
Yeah,
because you wonder what their
that's
plans
what it
were,
is.
right?
That's what it is. We put so much of that into what they're giving us. It's a part of them. So now it no longer feels like that. Who's the guy you Jacob highlighted a couple of weeks ago on the episode, the one who basically makes a factory out of writing books?
Brandon Sanderson, he's the one that
Exactly.
uses like a massive team of editors, although he doesn't consider himself an executive producer like Patterson does. That's why I found that distinction interesting.
Mm, interesting for sure.
I wonder how many of those popular authors, the ones that end up on the bestseller list, who have more than one book out a year, I would say, actually do that kind of stuff, but just isn't
Yeah. That's fair.
broadcasting it to people.
Yeah, we
I
don't
just
know.
think about
It used to be something that you wanted to keep under wraps, right? Like all the Nancy Drew books were written by I can't remember how many authors, but
Mm,
they were perpetuated over time by these different authors. But that was a big sort of secret. It wasn't
Was
well
it?
known
no.
until
Scandalous.
yeah,
But I feel like that,
yeah, it was.
again, with the bigger series, longer series, you're just trying to retain an audience and it just keeps going and going. It makes much more sense to do that. I'm
Yes,
not
yeah.
as hurt. Karen, Theresa, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Have a blessed rest of your year, and we will catch back up with you in January.
Great. Happy
Sounds
Happy
holidays.
wonderful.
holidays. We were speaking with Karen McKay and Theresa Power from the Center for Equitable Library Access. That puts a wrap on co-authoring. But of course, we got much more conversation coming your way on this episode. Sarah Hillis is coming back with Know Your Narrator. And we're getting to this week's book club question. What books give you wintry vibes? We'll be right back. It's AMI Audiobook Review. Welcome back. It's AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. And of course, we are bringing in a guest because there's only so often that we like to talk amongst ourselves. And it's Know Your Narrator time because once a month we like to feature a notable narrator in the world of audiobooks with Sarah Hillis, and we get to know their personalities, shout out those voices, and of course their backgrounds. Sarah, we are going to get to know your narrator shortly, but first, we thought it'd be fun to bring you in on the book club question and shout out some of the responses we got from the book club peoples. And of course, hear your thoughts on the question, which is what books give you wintry vibes? So easy. What an easy question. We don't always give out easy questions, huh, Jacob?
No. You know what gives me wintry vibes? The
What?
studio right now. It's freezing.
It's freezing.
It's so
Yeah,
cold.
it's freezing.
Okay. So, Sarah, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
I tend to feel that winter is a time to really get into something big. So either it's an old series I've read before, like say the Harry Potter series, or sometimes I do Tolkien, sometimes I do C.S. Lewis, one or two of his series. This year I'm actually going to do Gone with the Wind for the first time ever.
Okay.
And possibly the sequel too, called Scarlet, which was not written by the author,
No.
but I saw the
good.
made-for-TV movie,
Mm.
So so I might be diving into those.
Are you starting it in 2023 or after the new year?
It'll be in 2023 when my Audible credits come,
Okay.
which is tomorrow, actually. Oh, no, it's a Friday, actually,
Mm.
yeah.
And then you might finish it in 2024. So, you're scaling
maybe.
that boundary. Nice.
So you like
Yeah.
getting into longer works during the holidays. I'm guessing that's just because of a factor of time. You just have more time on your
Yeah,
hands.
and during the winter, I just like to winter in general, I just like to dive into something that's going to really immerse me in a big way. Of course, during the holidays, I mean, Dickens, what else can you do? You got to read A Christmas Carol if you're a Dickens fan like
True.
me, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know, just big books.
Big books. And not familiarity, right? Like a lot of
Not
people talk
always.
about their coziness and going back to things.
Yeah, sometimes I go for the cozy feel of I've read this 800 times and I just want to read it again, like a warm bath or something, right? I like to do that. But
It's true, though. Jacob, don't scoff. It's
you just
true.
he can scoff if he wishes.
That wasn't
no.
a scoff.
It
That was a
sounded
chuckle.
like it.
That was a breathy chuckle.
It was like,
It was a
ha
breathy-
ha, you sillies.
Okay.
She said bath on the radio.
Do you ever
Podcast.
read in the bathtub?
No. I'm afraid I'll kill myself with some electronic device or something.
It's not a toaster.
The iPad fire. Oh, no. Okay. Let's listen to Kamini Rodhan, who's a frequent listener of the show and responder of the book club question. She's got something to say as well.
I think I might, especially in the wintertime. I tend to read a lot more because I like to stay inside a lot more, which means more reading for me. In terms of books, I think I prefer to read maybe longer and heavier books in the wintertime as well, too. Bye for now.
Okay, so she goes into heavy books during the holidays. Why do you think that might be? I can't read her mind. I kind of wish we had her with us right now, but what do you think that is?
Maybe because you're more open to having heavier reads in colder, darker days because you feel like a heavier person. You know how in the summer, like we crave just lighter books? Like I really don't want to get into something deep, dark, scary, reflective when I just want to be out by the beach and having a good time and listening to pop radio.
Right. Nobody's listening to Dostoevsky in July.
Oh my gosh.
And like,
Except me.
but the other thing is Christmas time, it's always around the time of year where the nights are at their longest.
Yeah.
Right? So it is literally a darker time of year.
It is. And I think that, like, honestly, not to get too deep about it, but mental health wise, like, we're just maybe at different places, significantly, some of us, than we are during longer, sunnier, warmer days.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's been clinically proven that
Yeah.
like mental health really takes a dip when you get less sunlight, which is
Yeah.
just makes me think, why would you want to live somewhere along the Arctic Circle?
Right. Oh, God.
Oh
yeah.
my God, sounds miserable.
Whole different convo.
Do you want to read the next response from Michelle McLaughlin?
Danielle McLaughlin, who is a regular contributor on Kelly and Ramya, she said, "Oh, good question. I asked my granddaughter who's visiting us, and she says for her, winter reading is American Southern Gothic literature." We're going to have to analyze
Very
this one as
specific.
well. Very,
Hey.
very. She includes As I Lay Dying and The Sound of the Fury by William Faulkner. I prefer, this is back to Danielle, not her granddaughter, I prefer humorous literature in the winter because the bleak days can really get to me. At the moment, I'm reading some funny short works by David Sedaris. And he narrates his own audiobooks, and it makes her laugh a lot.
I can get behind that.
Okay, so we got two
He's
polar
cool,
opposites
yeah.
of responses. He's cool. Sarah, you got experience?
David Sedaris is awesome at narrating his books because he's so ironic and just like deadpan about his humor, and it's just great.
What kind of book? Like, what does he write about? Is it fiction?
It's mostly like kind of personal essay type stuff, and he's a, as I say, he's a wry comedian, and yeah, he gets to the heart of the craziness of the world, and it's cool.
The last answer is from Debbie Williams. I don't have a special read for the holidays because I don't typically reread books. There are so many out there that I always pick something new. I like romantic books to keep me in the spirit. Christmas is a romantic type of year, isn't it?
Yeah.
You go back to go see your family sometimes, and everybody's coupled up. You get cozy.
I mean, we hope to be.
You hope to be.
There's always that, oh, God, I need someone to bring to my family dinner conversations you hear all the time. Everyone's going to be bringing someone. I'm the only one who doesn't have anybody.
Yeah, but it's true.
Wah, wah.
I think we often see the holidays as like a time to mark the passage of time.
Yeah.
Where it's like every time you get to the holidays, you always think back on the year. And that's romantic in
That's
a sense.
romantic.
Yeah.
Also, you like want to be with someone during the holidays because the holidays are so festive, and that's why the opposite of like having conversations around loneliness around the holidays is very sad and hard for people.
Yeah, that's true. I always get heartwarming feelings every time I hear stories of like a family that takes in somebody who doesn't have a family to
Yes,
spend the
yes,
holidays with.
yes.
I always love that.
Yeah. Now, wait, back to this. What did we call it? Dark Southern Gothic literature.
American Southern Gothic literature. Yeah.
What is that even?
So
Oh,
I actually
it's-
looked it up. Apparently, Gothic genre it has to do with a setting that's typically very like grotesque and decaying, and there's a lot of like kind of spooky supernatural characters.
Whoa.
And if it's Southern, it has to do with like the social fabric of the South kind of falling apart. But if it's done in like the Gothic style, it's because everything is decaying. Like think crumbling architecture, like rinky-dink little towns and swamps and
Okay.
spooky people.
Yeah. I mean, Faulkner's not supernatural. It's a family. It's a family, and families have secrets, and it's
That's
yeah,
juicy.
it's very very dark and ominous, I guess.
That's juicy. I love all of these. I kind of am starting to take these as recommendations of what to read for the winter, which is nice. By the way, this is the time of year when I'm most likely to read fantasy.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll start
Cool.
reading the Lies of Lochlamora again, Jacob.
You better. This is driving me nuts.
I knew to be a
You
sore
made a
spot.
promise.
I did. I'm sorry.
Oh my god! Before I get too riled up, let's move on to the whole reason we brought Sarah on. Know your narrator. Who are we featuring today?
Emily Wu Zeller is her name. She's a golden voice for Audiophile magazine, so they gave her that in 2020.
Mhm.
She's been narrating books since about 2009. I don't have a number of books, but she's been doing a heck of a lot. And she is one of these. Her books often make the best of audiobook lists. Most years there's an Emily Wu Zeller or a couple on the list, and I don't know if it's because of her always or because of the author, but she's a very good narrator, so I would think it's a lot of times because of her.
Any like patterns or the word I think of is typecasting of what she will read, or does she do everything?
I think she reads anything and everything that she thinks is cool to read. But she's worked a lot on Asian and Asian American literature because she can do especially Chinese and other Asian accents pretty well. So they like to have her read those, and she likes to read them too because they're not always well promoted, and she likes to spread the word about these cool genres, or not genres but types of literature, I suppose. Because she says in one of her interviews, there is no real Asian American literature genre. There's Asian American people writing literature across all kinds of genres.
Right.
So.
Oh, that's so fair.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! It feels like such a light bulb moment hearing that actually. Because
I've never heard that before.
Right?
That's a really good point.
Because it's the same. Well, I guess we're getting a little further along with like LGBTQ representation.
Yeah.
But even that, I think, was at a point where you could say the same thing. Like you're representing authors of the LGBTQ plus community, but not necessarily the literature genre. Same thing with Indigenous writing. Okay, carry on.
You brought us a clip from Emily. You want to take a listen?
Yeah, this is actually from a LGBTQ book. It's published. It's by Allie Temple. It's called Unleashed. It's published by Allison Temple Books. So it's independently published, and Emily did the narration for. It's number 3 in this series about lesbian pirates, as Emily said to me.
If you rub that any harder, we'll have to cover your eye with a patch. I started at the familiar voice as Merrow settled into the chair beside me. For a moment, I'd forgot about the eye I'd been rubbing for the better part of the last 5 minutes. I had no doubt the entire left side of my face must be puffy and red, but whatever flake of grit or dust had settled under my eyelid was still there, making tears stream over my cheek. Might as well get me a stumpy leg and knock out a few of my teeth to complete the look, I grumbled. It's what everyone expects anyway. The reception hall in the Vestrian Palace, with its high ceilings and hung with the banners of Queen Sheree's court. The space could have held hundreds, and while it was far from full, enough people were gathered that more than half of the chairs set out in the gallery were occupied, and strangers had no doubt been forced to sit next to each other. Yet the chairs nearest to me on all sides, and even the rows in front and behind of me, were empty.
Sarah, she kind of sounds like you.
Really?
I find it.
Actually, yeah.
She does, doesn't she?
Like the tone is not
know.
necessarily you, but I feel like if you were to read this book, it might sound similar.
Sarah, it sounds like you, but like 20 years older.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Just a thicker voice. Just what
yeah,
I was thinking.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I'm reading a book called, which is awesome by the way, called My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix.
Ooh.
And she narrates that, and it's about teenagers in the 80s. And so in that book, she's got a higher register that she uses for narration. Now it was back in
for the
2016
default
or something. Yeah, for the default narration because it's told from the point of view of one of the friends, and like it's told in the third person, but it's her point of view throughout the book. So it's a higher tone. I think that's what she's really good at, is changing her register to fit different types of books. She even said when I asked her for the sample, she said, well, what do you want? Because my style's different no matter what I do. So what are you looking for? And so she's quite versatile in that way.
So it's one thing to change your register, change your voice for certain characters, but it's another thing to do it for the standard voice, like you put it, Ramya. Like to do the narration voice in as a character for an entire book, that's very demanding.
Yeah, I think that for these kind of, I guess you know how you said she's good with accents, she's really like invested in the representation side of things, but then there's like the theater side, right? So I'm very curious about what background she has for what she does or how she
Yeah.
came upon this.
Yeah, well, she's born in California, lived in primarily Asian communities growing up, and she really got into that world, I guess, living, in these communities. She did she did performance studies at college and dance and things, and she decided to go to Asia to see if she could get some work because she wanted to just get out of her little place and go somewhere cool and new. And her sister had already gone there, so she thought, well, I'll hang out with my sister for a while and see what I can do. And she decided to get work voicing anime, like doing English dubbings of anime in Hong Kong. And she said that when she did that, they were doing like 4 episodes a day, which is not usually what American studios would do and not usually what's done nowadays. It's a lot less, demanding. But 4 episodes of these shows a day, and you had to switch characters like boom, boom, boom really quickly.
Right.
And so
Trial
she
by
learned
fire.
a lot of she learned a lot of really cool stuff doing that. And then she came back to America and thought she'd try her hand. She wanted to do voiceover work for sure, like commercials and whatever else she could get. Voiceover work was what she really wanted to focus on in many ways. And so she sent in a professional or what she thought was an unprofessional demo actually to BBC Books America, which now is Audio Go.
Wait, I'm curious about the demo.
I don't know what it was. She didn't say. But and then they said, "Hey, we want you." So she started working for them, and then as time went on, she worked for more publishers and made a go of it. Has her own little studio that she works from, and kind of it's her own little business, and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
She says she's an introvert, and that was a big part of her moving to doing voice work.
Yeah, like she has done theater work, but I mean, she's not like super comfortable, I guess, out in front of everybody all the time. So to have that rest to just go in the studio and do it is cool. But she also says she does miss the collaboration of theater work when she gets to do theater. It is nice to collaborate on stuff. And in the studio, you don't get to do that usually.
So we obviously talked about that representation aspect for her, but she's done all kinds of genres and types of books, I guess.
Oh yeah, fantasy, literature, fiction, romance, nonfiction, including The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. And that was one of the books. Yes.
Okay.
That was one of the books that really got people to know like who she was, because they actually wrote to her and they said like, I might not have done this if I just read the book, but your narration was so friendly and nice that I thought maybe I'll try, Yeah,
you need like a nagging mom type of voice to do that.
Yeah, you were that infomercial, weren't you?
Okay. Yeah, that's a difficult read to do because by the title, it sounds super condescending.
Yeah.
Marie Kondo is?
No.
No!
He doesn't know?
After this, you gotta
my
go check
gosh.
out Marie Kondo. She like made a new invention of tidying. What is it? If you
What?
touch it and it gives you joy, keep it. If not, throw it out.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing.
And
she said it much more
now she said
brutally.
since she had kids, she's not so into tidying
Oh,
because
really?
it's too hard.
We're shocked.
She's finding it's too hard. And it's
Oh, wow.
First time a new mother has ever said that.
Way to
Yeah, right.
backpedal.
Yeah, also,
Write a
what is this
book.
doing for your marketing, lady?
Recall all your books. Refund everyone.
I think honesty is a good thing.
That's fair.
Whatever.
No, that's true. That's true.
Not buying it. Okay, did she have a big break moment, Sarah? Back to
That was
Emily, by
it.
the way,
That
not
was-
Marie
that
Kondo.
was- That was it. That their
That was
book. It was so viral because the book was so viral, and the audiobook went viral too, just cause. And everyone was like, "This this is cool. She did a really good job.
Mm.
She tells another story of narrating a book called Gulp, Adventures on the Alimentary Canal by Mary Roach, which is a science book about the digestive system of all things. And she said she gave it to a friend of hers and said maybe she'd like, that's a cool gift. It's I made it, I narrated it. What, she'll like this. And the friend said, you know, I couldn't finish this book. It was too detailed. You know, I couldn't. It kind of made me feel ill. But Emily loved it because it was so geeky and fun and interesting, right? So
it's awkward, right? Like when you're in this field, I don't know if you guys have this, but when I want to recommend a podcast, especially to like a close friend or a family member, there's always a part of you that's like, but I'm in it. But it was so good. You got to listen. But if they don't love it, then you're like, oh, it kind of feels insulting on me.
Yeah.
It's like when someone asks you to recommend something and you're like, oh, here's my music. I'm sure you'll like it. Here's my book. I wrote it. It's really good.
Right. So like obviously she didn't recommend this because she read it. Like she was the narrator, but also it's kind of like, I can't finish it and I'm so sorry. It's not because of your narration.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally, but I didn't like this book. But that's another thing about recommendations, that they kind of stick to you. So if you recommend a god-awful book, then you're going to go back to that person and be like, why did you recommend me this? Like,
and never again. Not coming to you for
I don't trust you anymore.
This is going to be problematic. Sarah, what do you think of her narration? I know you said you're reading my friend's, what is it? My best
friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, which is a total 80s love fest. It's got demons. It's got, you know, crazy 80s stuff. It's just awesome. It's just totally ridiculously fun. Her narration's great. She can change emotional registers really quickly. Like if somebody had a bad night's sleep, for example, the narration which describes the bad night's sleep will sound like the person had a bad night's sleep. This is what went on and this is how horrible they felt and that kind of thing. Not over the top, but it's there. She can change pacing really quickly and well. So if it's a more reflective thing, it's slower. If it's an action thing, it's more clipped and careful and, you know, precise, I suppose, to get the action sounding fast, you know. Not this, the narration doesn't speed up too much. It's just the way she narrates, right? It sounds good. And her narration of Men, I had an interviewer who said that she really liked her narration of Men, and I think I agree with that because it's pretty subtle, but it's there. You can tell it's men. And I had a friend who actually said that she had preferred men voicing female characters in a book rather than women voicing male characters in a book because it just seemed to work better for her because it was like the men weren't trying too hard. They just kind of lightened their voice a little bit and it sort of worked. And I thought that was an interesting point. I think nowadays that the women may not be trying so hard as they used to make sure that this sounds like a man, right? Because if you just subtly lower your voice,
that's plenty.
And the attribution is there, like Chris said or whatever, like it's there. You know, you don't have to freak out about it.
We actually have a clip of Emily Wu Zeller doing her man voice.
We've lost everything, the man on the reception room floor was saying. He was old enough to be my father, and while his severe dark clothes and wide vowels identified him as Red Mirian like my father, the straightness of his shoulders and the way he filled out his coat said he had never known hunger or struggle the way my father had. The Duke forced us from our home. He took everything we had. My sons were in the city, and both died of the fever in the spring.
So,
okay.
Yeah. That's an older man. That's kind of
very manly.
Obviously, a sort of supporting character. I would say sometimes narrators go a little crazy with the little characters. You know.
Yeah, that's true. I've noticed that for sure.
Yeah.
They do their wilder voices because they don't want to have to record 5 hours worth of some crazy voice.
I know we're almost out, but I do want to ask because she has this opinion, Emily, about like talent versus skill building.
Yeah, she really believes that you really should have an ear for accents and languages. Just people just kind of have it, and then they can learn easily. Skill building is important, of course, but she does believe that there's a little bit of talent that's got to just be there in people.
For you to be able to
Uh,
hear what's good, what's working.
what's good and what's not. Yeah. Yeah.
Some sort of raw talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way of really proving that. I think it's just kind of a gut thing.
Gut. Exactly.
Oh yeah, it's an
Yeah.
opinion.
It is, yeah. Or your idea of what's. I often think that that's still skill, like your idea of what sounds good, but then being able to execute that yourself, like perform it that way. Because sometimes you're
Yeah.
gap, right? That's why some
Yeah.
people are talent scouts and not talented themselves.
Oh,
Ouch.
Oh boy.
well, their skill, their talent is finding people with
Sure.
talent. That's a talent
Yeah.
all of its
That's
own.
the first part of it.
Sarah, thank you so much. This was the Know Your Narrator segment, and you were featuring Emily Wu Zeller.
Yeah, no problem.
Talk to you next month.
Bye.
Next week, we're going to be talking about a series that's near and dear to the hearts of a lot of people in the millennial generation. That's you and me, Ramya. And we're getting a regular AMI contributor who's also a massive podhead, Grant
Are we
Hardy.
allowed to say that? It's Potterhead.
I'm making a joke.
I know you tried to get away with it.
I was getting to it. That's right. We're reviewing Harry Potter finally from a 2023 perspective because Harry Potter has a complex legacy, and he's going to help us break it down because he's a massive Harry Potter fan.
Yeah. I would say he's probably a bigger Potter head than me. Oh, jeez. All right. Anyways, we're looking forward to it. Also, you could still give us your responses for the book club question. What books give you wintry vibes? Call us 1-866-509-4545. Email us feedback@ami.ca. And that's it.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. That's all, as Irene says on Kelly and Romeo. Okay, this is AMI Audiobook Review, and until the next episode, happy audiobook listening.